You're listening to Power Talk, Berkeley Electric Cooperative's official broadcast about the cooperative, our communities, and ways to use energy wisely. And now, let's join our hosts for today's episode. Good morning and welcome to Power Talk. I am your host, Micah Ponce, the Communications and Media Specialist here at Berkeley Electric Cooperative. And as always, I am joined by Miss Libby Roig, our Director of Marketing and Communications. Good morning, Libby.
Good morning, Micah.
Well, for our regular listeners and viewers, you're going to recognize today's guest, who's been a frequent visitor to our show, Mr. Tommy Harvey. But Libby, something looks a little different about him today. Lose a little weight, get a new haircut. What is it? What's different about Tommy?
I know. Welcome, Mr. Vice President.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm glad to be here.
Tommy Harvey just got a promotion. Congratulations. Well deserved.
I appreciate that. Honored to even be considered for it. So to have it as, to be given the role is certainly something that I appreciate and don't make light of. So,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for the few people who may not know who you are in Radio Land,
One or two.
Yeah, I'm
one or
guessing
two.
there's a few.
Yeah, I mean, you get swarmed by groupies every time you go out. Got to sign all the autographs.
Sure. Yeah.
But for those few who haven't had the chance to meet you yet, just give us a brief, rundown, I guess, of your tenure here that led you to your new illustrious position.
Right. So, I came to the cooperative in 1999. I came in as an entry-level groundsman helper, I think was my original title. Started on the line crew working at a system-wide underground crew with a line foreman, Mark Brinson, was the one that originally hired me. I worked there with Mark for a couple of years and moved for like overhead training into the Moncks Corner district and spent several years there. I think I became, back then we called it a first class lineman, or what we call now a journeyman lineman. I became a journeyman back, 2005 or 6 or so, and spent a lot of time in Moncks Corner. We built another, the co-op opened another system-wide underground crew. Back had to be 2008, sometime around 2008. And I moved back onto a system-wide underground crew, spent a couple of years there working with another one of a great foreman who has since moved into another leadership role. Duffy Wright was our line foreman back on system-wide when I went back a second time. So worked on system-wide for, a couple of years for Duffy, and then was eventually made line foreman there on system-wide also. When I think it seemed like Duffy was promoted, and I got one of the roles there on the system-wide underground crew.
Okay. Well, talking about memory lane, one of my fond memories of Tommy, I guess, when you were back, you were probably a journeyman lineman at the time, and you got to help me out of a tight spot when we were during Hurricane Katrina.
I remember that well. You actually drove down behind us bringing some parts or something for a truck we needed, and you showed up first day on the job and conveniently bogged your vehicle down
completely.
Right
Yeah, I had been on site for all of 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Parked my vehicle on the side of the road on what I thought was dry land, and apparently was just sand with some water.
A silt-filled ditch or something.
Oh, my gosh. Was this Mississippi? Where were you guys?
At Gulf Shores, Alabama, right across the bay from Mississippi. But I buried the front of my truck, and I just sort of stood there helplessly and had to walk down the road. And one of the first people I came to was Mr. Tommy Harvey, who had to come pull my truck out of the ditch.
Yep.
So
it's been much ridicule from Michael since then, too, I'll tell y'all. So.
That's how our department rolls, too, is we're always looking for dirt to pick on each other about. But so, Tommy, in co-op land, a lot of times we have more overhead miles than we do underground. So our co-op, last couple of years, we flipped that. So we've got more underground than we do overhead. But back in 1999, pop quiz, do you remember roughly what our underground mileage looked like?
Oh, no, but I know it was far less. I will tell you that then there was no Cane Bay, there was no Nexton.
Yeah.
There was no Carnes development.
Were there still cows on Kiowa in 1999?
No, there probably were no cows. But we've since built, I'm sitting there trying to think, probably 8, 9 substations, that we've built since then. Since Cane Bay and all that whole area started. And that's if you don't count adding additional power transformers into existing substations. So I'm just talking about new stations. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a lot of growing for a long time. So,
well, as the VP of operations, you should be able to tell our folks out there, we talk about overhead, we talk about underground. You think it'd be a no-brainer. Let's put stuff underground. But I mean, what are the advantages and disadvantages of overhead versus underground? Just a real quick synopsis.
Yeah, so great. It sounds great if you talk about it and you say, wow, well, you can put all this in the ground. If storm comes, we don't have to worry about outages and things like that. And that's from a high level view, that looks good and sounds great. The issue comes in a couple of areas. One is it costs more. Costs far more to install underground infrastructure than it does overhead. And 2, when you do have a failure or a damage, somebody dig in or bore in or something like that, it takes a lot longer to fix it. It costs more and it takes longer to fix it. In an overhead situation, not only is it less expensive on the front end of building and owning that plant, it is far cheaper to fix it when a car runs into a pole. Obviously a terrible situation a lot of times, but it's quicker to restore, quicker to fix. So it's there's give and take for both. Both have their advantages. In a wind event, 9 out of 10 times underground's great to have.
Right.
Yeah. The storm that moved through in January, I live in Crowfield, and somebody said, did you guys lose power? I'm like, oh, no, not in Crowfield. We've got underground. We've got a substation right there. So I'm like, yep, we're golden.
Yeah, the one thing that folks got to remember, though, even with underground, at some point, there's a line up in the air.
Yep.
So, I mean, whether it's transmission or something, coming directly out of the substation, there's a little bit of line in the air somewhere. So it's always a little bit vulnerable as well.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you've been a little bit of everywhere within the co-op, but like you said, you started out as a line worker. What drew you to want to join the co-op and become a line worker?
So I guess curiosity and probably some initiative, I guess. I didn't know a lot about electricity. I did not know a lot about electricity.
I still don't.
But I did. I was at least curious about how, at the basic level, how a wire that small can feed this many people.
Right.
And learning those principles and coming in from the ground level and working through the entire training program here at the cooperative, it gives you that perspective, it gives you that understanding. So I learned a lot about that and how that works. That kind of drew me in initially, and then as well as the benefits of coming into a stable company and having, your retirement laid out for you and being able to come in and have sick leave available to you and vacation and that kind of stuff was attractive as a young man just starting a family. So that kind of initially drew me in, and then obviously the opportunity career holds in a company that's proactively engaged at the employee level that want to see them develop, and they'll take folks who want to do more and take on more. They'll allow them to do that here at the cooperative, and that's one of the things I saw and learned early, and just tried to take advantage of it the best I could anyway.
Yeah, and that really is the beauty of being a line worker at the co-op.
That's right.
You can come in not knowing anything, and we'll tell you everything you need to know and train you, as long as you've got a good work ethic and the working conditions are to your liking. You like to be outside. You like to
that's kind of important on the front end of that for sure. So.
Yeah, I can't repair the lines from a desk.
Well, I mean, even for those folks who work internally, because I actually started the year after Tommy, because I started in 2000, so I've been here just about as long as he has. And that
you're not vice president, though.
No, I am not. I'm the communications guy. But I mean, a lot of the same reasons that you came were the same reasons I came. Stability, that nice, stable work environment, that regular paycheck. I came from the newspaper world and selling ads and having that variable paycheck from month to month wasn't real conducive to starting a family, even when you're young. So having that stability and like you said, it's been like a family growing up here at the co-op. Sort of right. My whole career, I've stayed just about, like I said, just about as long as you have. So, during your time here and building your career, I'm sure you've had some folks. You've mentioned Duffy, but I'm not going to say Duffy was a positive influence on your career, but
he absolutely was. He absolutely was, and I've had the benefit of great leadership in front of me with, there's a handful of folks that stick out to me that I remember, from the time I came here until even most recently. I see folks who I feel are great leaders. You had Kevin Mazzell still here. Kevin was I think he was a second class, what we called a second class lineman at the time when I came here. Kevin was one of those folks that always handled himself well and did well in front of people and had a great work ethic. Tony Simmons recently retired. He retired in December 22. I always saw that in Tony, and ended up as everything played out and fate ran its course, I ended up working closely with Tony until, the last 6 or 7 years before he retired. He and I actually worked together on a lot of things. And folks like him and Lukey Varner from, yesteryear.
Oh, yeah.
John Villaponte, Tim Mobley. Tim, when I moved into the manager of operations role, which we kind of changed over the last couple of years into a director, but when I first moved into that role, Tim and John Villaponte 100% were an open book with me. They knew, both of them knew I was coming in from the outside world, not having been in the office. I went from worrying about myself and 4 other guys to myself and 84 other guys in the stroke of a pen. So that's where your Tony Simmons and your John Villaponte, Scott Bennett, you know what I mean? Tim was an open book with me. He was always took the time with me and shared his experience and knowledge over the years. And those are things you can't, there's no book you can read. They're going to provide you that kind of input. And I certainly appreciate all that those guys did for me, to this point anyway.
Yeah. Well, and the tremendous responsibility, particularly the operations leadership has. I mean, you're literally responsible for the safety and well-being of, like you said, 80, 90 guys, who every day are dealing with very high-stakes situations.
Yeah, that's right.
And by the same token, the safety of our members, because those guys have to be trained and to do their job properly to make sure that the system functions the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, keeping our employees safe and our members safe. Yeah. So, but clearly your mentors saw something in you, your personality and your drive, and invested their time in you.
Yeah, maybe they did. I mean, I tried to this point, I've just tried to put my best foot in front of me and try to work from that and commit to the goals and try to understand what at the end of the day, what the company mission is and where we want to be as an organization and what it takes to get there and trying to get the most from your assets, be it personnel or equipment or whatever the situation is. You're trying to make the most of what you have.
Yeah. Well, as much as things stay the same, they also change. And your position is actually a new one at the co-op. Under Tim Mobley's tenure, the job was Vice President of Engineering and Operations.
Correct.
So when Tim announced his retirement last year, our CEO, Mike Fuller, decided to split that into 2 roles. So here's your chance to, make Mike look good. Why was that a good decision in your opinion?
So Mike, I'm confident that he came to others and talked with others as well before he before he made that decision. And I know that's just the kind of leader he is. He gets other folks' input before he decides on something as big as that.
Yeah.
And he came to me and he asked me what I thought about that. And obviously I would have a bias, you know, in that regard. And I'm sure he tempered whatever response I gave him knowing that. I felt like it would work, to answer your question. I felt like it would work because if we divided the department and we aligned it correctly based on the responsibilities within that department, and I mean from the operations side, meaning the folks in the field who are responsible for our distribution system. If we line those folks up in the departments that support them effectively when splitting the department, I thought it would work for sure. We still have so much of our design and the coordination of that system comes from the engineering side.
Yeah.
And we got a guy that's fantastic at doing that. Has been doing it here a long time, and he's assumed that role. And Chris and I agree on and align on so many things as it works out, but that didn't start with a designation or a new title for either one of us. That's something that we did in the roles we had prior to now. You know, he and I've always enjoyed working with Chris, always thought highly of Chris and appreciated what he brings regarding the technical expertise that is certainly commendable that he has. I mean, he does a fantastic job of that. Now it's on him to impart that wisdom that he has on a great group that we have in-house now as far as the engineering side of things. So yeah, it's I just think it works because of the folks that are in place, some key people we have, not counting me, in both departments, from Adam Bradshaw back over to Thomas Barnett, who's going to be over some different areas now, and I think it's just all going to work really well based on the personalities and the skill sets that are in each department.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the early changes you guys have made, I think, are definitely good growth opportunities for the folks in those roles.
Well, that was a little bit of a spoiler alert because Chris Rutledge is going to be one of our other guests this month. So you set it up for him. Yeah, well, he'll be on one of our
what
future
a segue. I gave that.
But for those of you who are just joining us, we are about halfway through talking with Mr. Tommy Harvey, the newly minted Vice President of Operations here at Berkeley Electric Cooperative, and we're getting sort of an outlook on Tommy's history and his role at the cooperative and sort of how things have changed. And, you know, you've worked your way from groundsman up to vice president, and you've probably seen a lot of things during, you know, that time. And I mean, when you go through the interview process, go a little bit off script here, but they always say, what's your vision for the department, you know, if you get this role? So, I mean, is there anything specific that you think that you want to address now that you're vice president of operations? Any special projects that you think need to be undertaken?
Yeah, so a couple of things come to mind. In one of these items I pitched when I interviewed for the role, I was 100% committed to taking full advantage of the technologies that we have here at the cooperative. We've got some software platforms that we have in-house already. It's not something that we have to go out and subscribe to or acquire. We've already got the technology. We've got to take advantage of it. One of those is converting our daily service order type work that is currently a paper process, is converting that 100% electronic through our company-wide accounting platform that we have that encompasses so much of what we do, from design on the engineering side to repairing one of the members' street lights, you know, on a daily that we do. So we my hope is to get that. I would love to have that implemented by this summer. We got a whole lot of training that's going on this year with some new programs we're developing currently, but I'm hoping to have that at least engaged at all 4 districts by this summer, and that would be a huge deal just for data, you know, from the analytical side of performance based on efficiencies gained through not having to print service orders or bring guys back in the afternoon to pick up a printed service order where it's something we can send directly to their mobile device, in the field.
Right.
And that's a big deal. That's something exciting to me. I remember when the cooperative went from paper timesheets to electronic, I was like, man, this is going to drive me crazy having to deal with it. Now I can't imagine doing anything but, doing my time once a week from
your cell phone.
Absolutely. Wherever I need to do it from, I can do. I don't have to come to the office and hunt one of the big printed timesheets. It's just, that seems so antiquated now to me, and so does our current service order process. So I'm looking forward to changing that for sure.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, you're talking about, data, and I guess that's not something that most folks probably aren't going to be thinking, when it comes to outages, or you're thinking like the big trucks and equipment and things of that nature. But yeah, over time, data has sort of become our biggest tool for ensuring outages and reliability. And I mean, we currently have a pretty high reliability rating. Is that correct?
We do.
Record high in it.
Yep. Yeah. There are 3 industry-wide indices that we use to monitor reliability, and one of them, our SAIDI, I believe it was, is one that we actually set a record on late last year. So, and obviously, I'm gonna temper that with saying that we had, regarding storms last summer, knock on wood, where's that at? Knock on wood, that we didn't have a lot of storms last summer. Now, in 2022, we did. We caught the devil, all summer long with storms in the afternoons and overnight. So, but that impacts you. We don't look at that once a month or once a week, or once a quarter. We look at that annually, and we've been tracking it for years. So we get to see those trends, a real holistic trend, instead of a monthly or a summer type event. So we're looking at those long term, and we are certainly, our trend currently is in the right direction where we want to be. So,
well, I mean, in terms of technology, I mean, what has been, over your career, I guess, what's been the biggest game changer, or a few of the biggest game changers for you? Because when we first met, you were, out there shoveling trenches and digging holes and, with a shovel, and, like you said, we were doing paper stuff, and, the technology has definitely changed over the years. What have been some, like, I guess, sort of the big ones that you remember that sort of made your life easier as a lineman coming up through the ranks?
So I remember when I came here, and even before then, we had the old analog phasing instruments on the line crew, and they were big and cumbersome, and they were tethered together, by a physical cable that, when you were required to test from 2 different cabinets or 2 different sections of a cabinet, or 2 different lines overhead, you had to reach from one to the other with this cable dangling, and then you had to pay out enough cable to reach over to another section. It's all just a really cumbersome but necessary device. Today, our guys, many of our crews have devices now that are far more accurate than those are, and they're Bluetooth, completely wireless. They can put them on a live line tool. The employee can walk over to this cabinet, take a reading, while simultaneously another employee takes the Bluetooth paired device to that over to another cabinet, and they communicate and give an accurate reading between those 2 instruments. And you get down within 100 volts on a 14,000 volt system. You know what your voltage is and that kind of stuff. Just that kind of technology advancement. Now those devices come with a cost, obviously. They did not make them any cheaper since I came here. So they just, that kind of technology makes things easier for the guys, and don't have to deal with the cumbersome, big, bulky stuff that we did over years and years ago.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we've certainly seen the last few years, you mentioned the cost of everything has gone up, and, and that is something we take very seriously to try to manage.
That's right.
But, and we've talked about maintenance and investing on our system and that record reliability, but we're also juggling all of this stuff with tremendous growth in our area for well over the past decade. and we have such a diverse service territory, membership. I think a lot of people hear Berkeley Electric and think we just serve Berkeley County, but we serve portions of the Tri-County. You were out to the coast with the islands, Johns Island, Wamala, Kewah Seabrook,
That's right.
all the way into the National Forest and urban areas, Goose Creek, Moncks Corner. What challenges and opportunities does that growth, maintenance, cost present for your team?
So you mentioned how diverse our service territory is. You take from the likes of the infrastructure and just simply the logistical issues that come with this Kiowa and Seabrook. That whole dynamic there is starkly different than rural Hugie or rural Cane Hoy.
Yep.
Both have challenges. We did not have a single high water issue in Cane Hoy other than being able, say, when did we have the flood? 2015.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't have any equipment that flooded in Cane Hoy to speak of.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cane Hoy and Hugie is all overhead served area. That was a rain event. We didn't have a big issue. We had much of Kiowa and Seabrook out of lights for days because of a high water event. No wind involved, so their underground infrastructure over there wasn't impacted by high wind. It wouldn't normally be, but underground infrastructure does not care for high water.
And high salt water, too.
Correct. There's give and take with each one, and each one has their own benefits and challenges that come with whatever type system is installed there. So it's very different economic areas, but also very different infrastructure in both areas. So,
well, and as the vice president of that department, communicating with each district has its own personality.
That's right.
And communicating with those different districts and trying to keep operations parallel across districts,
That's right.
Has got to be just a huge communications leadership challenge.
Yep, it is. Each district, while we are a 4-district cooperative, all 4 districts run very similar, but they have very different demographics in each district. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I think that's much of what makes a co-op unique. We can serve, a ball field in Pineville, South Carolina, but we also serve, some of the most prestigious resorts on the East Coast. So it's very diverse, and that's something I've certainly come to appreciate here at the cooperative.
Yeah, I mean, I was down in Allendale during one of our lineman appreciation events, and I caught up with the crews, and I think it was Pepper Plantation down that way. And I mean, you've got $1 million homes.
That's right.
And then I drove about 20 minutes in the opposite direction, and I was deep in the woods, and there was like 1 or 2 houses down a dirt road. And I mean, like you said, a completely different feel, all within the same district.
Yep. That's an awesome part of the cooperative. I really do.
Yeah. Because every member is equally important to us.
That's right.
But so, Tommy, we've just got a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
You've built a career here at the co-op. What does it, if somebody's listening, grandma, a young person, if somebody's interested in a career in line operations at the cooperative, what does that take? Education, training, personality?
So, yes, it takes all 3. So, but all 3 of those help. But first, obviously, is a high school diploma or GED. You got to have one of those for them to admit you into school at Tech anyway. So most of our line personnel come through the electrical line worker program at Trident Tech here in North Charleston. We founded that program with Trident Tech, in partnership with Trident Tech, back 2008 or 9, I think it was when we did that. So that is the first part, is having that, get yourself through high school or get your GED, then having the desire and the initiative to work outside and be part of a team that is highly trained and highly efficient and effective at what they do. We will pay you to do that. The cooperative will certainly pay you to complete that program. And all we ask is the commitment to us, to the folks that you work with every day, and be here and be available to us when we need you. Obviously, after hours, if you're on the line crew, that's far different than working at Mercedes-Benz from 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? There are expectations that come with being on the line crew after hours. So, we just mentioned the responsibilities in cane hoy at night after a storm.
Right.
That's part of what we do. We
Mm-hmm.
call our folks in and expect to be able to get them after hours. So,
Well, folks, believe it or not, that's going to do it for another edition of Power Talk. We have our regular man on the mic, Mr. Tommy Harvey. He's basically going to take my job here. He's on the show so much.
Yeah.
But thank you for tuning in to Power Talk. This is the official broadcast of your electric cooperative, and you can catch up with past episodes on streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. And be sure to get a behind-the-scenes look on Berkeley Electric's YouTube channel. This is Power Talk, signing off.